Yes, sir. My name is Tony Johnson. I served in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam era. I served from 1974 to 1979. I was in three different outfits: air defense artillery, armor, and infantry unit. And my last assignment was over in Europe. Uh, Coming up during them times in the 70s, uh, I loved Europe. I didn't want to leave. Coming from a little town here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, uh, it was just something different for us. And I really loved it over there. I think the changes came when I came back to stateside, and they sent me, my last duty assignment was a place where we called Little Vietnam, which was Fort Polk, Louisiana. And that's where I encountered the first signs of discrimination. That's the time when we was out doing maneuvers, and I seen the first signs of blacks use this water fountain, blacks use the rear, blacks use this and that. And mind you, this is right outside of a military installation that the military people was using. And that was something that was stung me very hard. But it all added up together, because not only did we see the signs, we've seen it in the military ranks that I was serving with. As a young black male in the military that was faced with a lot of discrimination. And we had to learn from it, but the main thing about it is our people have given 400 years of slavery sweat and went to bed with whelps on their back. They marched and died, just to keep our pride. So the thing we had to do was stand tall and continue to move forward. Even though they tried to break us down and knock us down, we had to get back up and try to, and finish the job. And I managed to do that. Even though it was tears that was crying on the inside, we would never let them see that fear. And stuff. But and we, coming from New Mexico, we wasn't used to a lot of the racial divisions, inequalities and stuff. But during in the military, we finally faced it, the reality in the 70s. We thought it was all in the past, but it's not. It was never, it was still there. And then it became widespread, where we seen the treatment of people of color to these class of people here. Otherwise, they were treating them like second-class citizens and stuff like that, and we could never understand it. This is something that too many people didn't know. I think when I was in my last installation in Fort Polk, I tried to stand up to one of them, and I got sent to a disciplinary camp, in which I left, and I don't know what happened, but I found out later that somebody illegally signed some paperwork that they had sent me to the stockade. And during that time in there is where, I don't know the word to use, I'm trying to, is where I was physically assaulted and attempted sexually assaulted while I was in there. I had piss throwed on me. I had all this, I'm still going through treatment today for this. But that's where I had all the stuff that happened to me, and I couldn't understand it. Because I was trying to figure out the reason why. But after I kept hearing all these words, the N words, and stuff, and I said, well, but this is the military. We are brothers in arms here. But evidently, it wasn't, But it's, I don't know, I sat there and watched other friends of mine when I was in Germany just commit suicide because of disparities that they was going through in the military. And that took a lot from me right there too. And I suffered that pain and agony for over 30 years. But the changes, coming out the military and looking at the 30 years that I've been out, I think we have made a lot of progress, but we really don't see it. We hear about it, but we really don't see it. Because, even, just take an example of stuff of what happened to our country a couple of weeks ago. I thought I would never see this. But the covers finally came off for everybody and showed what this country is really all about. And now we really got to stand up and fight real hard now. Just our people that gave so much, they'd have marched and died. We'd have been beaten. Had dogs sick on us, fire hoses, all this. We had all this mistreatment. For them to try to classify us as second-class citizens, in which they don't know this is our country. We built this country, And, the military, I love the military, and I had referred a lot of young men of color to join the military, because I think they had a better chance of survival by being in the military than they did on the streets. At least when you went into the military, it teach them how to be something. Out here on the streets, there's only one or two things you can be here out here: a statistic or an inmate. Something like this here. So, the military does a lot of good, though. I have to say it does. Even though we still fighting a lot of battles in there with the sexual discrimination, and there's still a lot of racial stuff going on in there. It still has come a long way, and I still think it's a great opportunity for a lot of underprivileged youth to take advantage of. Yes, sir. We get along just like brothers. And, before the pandemic came, for the last 6 years, I went through this event. It's called the Golden Age Games. It's the Veterans Olympics, Disabled Veterans Olympics or Senior Olympics. I went, and it's just like a family reunion. And we, you meet veterans from all over the country, just like you would when you was in the military and assigned with them. And we managed to stay in touch through social media. And every year, a couple months before the games start, we would, really beef it up, challenges, talking a lot of trash. And we just can't wait to see each other because it's going to be a blast. And then the veterans we have here in our local area, one thing I can say about the veterans in New Mexico here, regardless of what skin color or whatever it is you are, you're still a brother. As long as they know you're a veteran, that's something that we bond and that we have together. And that's one that I'll always count on if I ever need them, is another veteran. And that's one of the discrepancies we have in our communities right now. These young kids, especially of color, don't have an outlet. They don't have the resources in place to help them make a decision on where they wanted to go. So that's why I think where we need to come as elder people to go down and try to put these resources into places, because we got a lot of our youth of color who has a lot of talent but don't know how to use it. Some of them could be doctors, engineers, attorneys. They could any kind of professional thing they could be if they had the resources to catch them at a younger age and get them on the right path. Now, the military has drawn down and got very strict. You have to score pretty high on math and science nowadays to even get into the military. But the military, when I was coming up, was the best way out of the so-called hood. But now I think that I don't even know if the military is suitable for our youngsters today. Because I think because even when you go in the military and you serve 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 years, you still have to come back to society. And what are you planning on doing here? So I would like to see us go into these communities and find all these communities that has been discriminated, left behind, forgotten about, and try to bring resources in there so we can motivate our youth to be something better than what the other person has been. They got a lot of talent. Devin, I took 5 kids from a middle school. Nobody had hope into these kids. Nobody had hope. And this was middle school. This was 7th grade. Out of them 5, and I tried to mentor and just guide them along, 3 turned out is in college right now. And you know, and I'm pretty sure you could reflect on this too. And it touches you when they respond or send you a message. Hey, thanks for your guidance and your leadership and stuff. That's how I got where I am today. You know, it makes you feel something. So if we could just do that, I think we could implement a lot, instill a lot of hope and motivation into our youth of the day. That's what they need, because you know, right now they're lacking a lot of structure and discipline from home, from their community, from the schools. They don't have anything out there. They don't, you know. But if we could just go in and put some resources in these communities, I think we can make a big difference. Even if it's just what they say, even if we only save one child, but I got to go better than that. If we could save 3/4 of them, we'll be doing our job. You know, so I think just taking advantage of the system and start implementing programs into these much needed communities, I think we could help build our youths up and make them better than what they even think of their own selves. You know, there's a future for them. Tomorrow's their day.
My name is Burnell Jamerson. I'm originally from Bakersfield, California, down in the San Joaquin Valley. And I've served so many places. I can give you Okinawa, Guam, Puerto Rico. I've been to Holland. I've been to DC, Arizona, California. Mostly the service that I had was mostly in the Far East, Korea, Japan, Philippines, Thailand. Then I got lucky and went to France and Germany and TDY to Spain. So that, and to Puerto Rico. So, so that's a pretty good span of time that I had there. A lot of those were temporary duty stations, and some were 1-year assignments. The one in California, I think I stayed there the longest, about 4 years at Hamilton Field, outside of San Francisco. And myself, at that time, being an athlete, I played football, and I got to go to a lot of different bases where they had the football programs, and sometime I even got TDY to the bases just to do that. So that was an experience in itself. So U.S. Air Force, 20 years and 23 days. Well, I was a tech sergeant, and I was stationed out at Kirtland Air Force Base in the communications section, and I took care of all of the inspections out there as far as the base goes for the communication squadron. And I was stationed out there for 3 years before I retired. U.S. Air Force. and when I first got here, it didn't please me at all. You know, it kind of, after a while, it kind of grew on me. And then And then I decided to stay here after I got out because I had already had a position with the telephone company,
Mm.
uh, Mountain Bell at the time. So I worked with them for a couple of years, and then I got laid off there, and I was laid off for maybe 5 months. And then I got another position with the independent telephone company, and I worked with them for 12 years before I moved back to California to work with the telephone company over there. And that's where I got all of my experience from telephone, was from the military.
Mhm.
When I first went in as heavy duty construction cable and,
Okay.
and antennas. And we built antennas and service antennas in the Philippines. And then I left there and I transferred over into the telephone section
Mhm.
of the military. And from then on, that's what my job was. Well, I had a great experience. I've had one incident with racial profiling and stuff because uh, in this white GI were coming back from Spain, bringing some equipment back, and we went to Dover, Delaware, and we picked up our equipment, put it on a truck, and then we stopped at this restaurant there, and we all went in, and they said, "Well, you can't eat in here." So I, nothing for me to do but go back and get out. The guy said, "Well, we'll we'll go and come out with you," but I tell him, "No, you don't have to. I can get something to eat somewhere else down the road," in which we did. So, and that's about the only thing that I really bad thing that I ever had in the military, because
Mhm.
like I say, when I first went in and got out of basic, I was stationed in San Bernardino, California, and I went to this outfit. There was only one other black guy in there, and the outfit was like 60 men total, and there
Mhm.
was two black guys in there, and it was the heavy duty construction outfit that I went to, and the majority of those guys were from Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, and like that. But I never had a problem with them. And we had one guy was from California, but the rest were all of them were from the South, and even the crew chief that I worked with. And we never had a problem as far
Mhm.
as a racial incident or anything like that. Uh, I know when I first went in, the service was just desegregated, I think in 51, I believe, and I went in 52. So
Mhm.
where I was, yes, until I got here, but out at the base, you could tell the underlying situations that were with certain people in the outfit, because they didn't want to recognize you for what you were doing or what you are. So I had an incident with a guy that I inspected his shop, and he didn't feel that he should have been written up, and I'd gone to his shop a week ahead of time and told him I would be back in a week, and if he'd have his shop straightened out, we wouldn't have any problem. And he didn't, so I wrote him up.
Yeah.
And so he goes to the old man, and they called me in, and I said, "Okay." I bring my regulations and I show it to him, and he says, "Okay, well, Sarge," he tell the other guy, says, you have to clean up your shop because that's the Air Force regulation. So uh, that's the only thing, it's like the good old boys club, really, you know. So that's the only thing you have to kind of look out for. It was underlying, but you could feel it was there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. How did you navigate that type of climate and that type of situation?
Well, I went and did my job the best of my ability, and I didn't worry about that stuff. You know, if it came to a point where I had to worry about it, there was always some place that I could go and get a settlement of what the situation was by either the commander or my NCOIC. So I never did really have to go that far, except for this one instance with this NCO. He outranked me, true enough, but he didn't outrank me for what I was doing. And that was in inspecting the communications of that particular outfit. No, I know a few. I'm not really. There's some in our church that I know, and the Black veterans that I know, and I bowl with a white veteran that's out of the Navy, and that's about it. No, I haven't. I haven't been out to the base, you know, to get connected with any group out there.
Okay.
Most of my time is with New Hope Church and
Okay. I hear
things
you. I
like
hear
that,
you.
you know. So, but like I say, I interact with the veterans that are in our church group more so than any place else.
Okay. And so I just have one more question, then I'll turn it over to Beverly to see if she has anything else.
Well, I would tell them this: if you don't have an opportunity to get an education in a college or a higher learning place, the military is a great place to get an education or to get a career. They can teach you things that you can use on the outside. Like I said before, all of my skills in the communication field was deemed from the military. Like I said, I started out in antennas and cabling. Then I went to uh, uh, telephones. And when I came to Kirtland, I was in charge of the liaison between Mountain Bell and the base. And through those connections, I got a job with Mountain Bell. So it would behoove them if they want to get a good education and a good retirement. I'd say the military would be a good place to start if there's no other opportunities available to them.
Ross Bettis. I'm from Tuskegee, Alabama. I've served 3 wars, Afghanistan 2 times, Operation Enduring Freedom 0405 and 0809, and then Operation Desert Storm. in Iraq and Kuwait, liberation of Kuwait. My service has all been in the Army. My first war, I was actually a college student and my unit got activated. So I went over as a military policeman. And we served with the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment out of Nuremberg, Germany, who was part of that flanking movement. But that's when I was 20 years old. So now I've retired from the military. I'm 51, be 52 shortly. You know, being a military guy, you know, you got to have basic training as your foundation. So when I, you know, kind of embarking on my 2nd career, realized that I needed basic training for a litigator is the DA's office. And so, you know, it's hard to recruit people to southeastern New Mexico. And I was in Michigan and the economy was tanking and people weren't leaving those jobs. So an alumnus of mine was a deputy district attorney here in Hobbs. And so I interviewed and packed up everything I had in the U-Haul and came to Hobbs, New Mexico, Hobbs, USA. Well, Hobbs is fine. As you're probably aware, coming from the East Coast where we're more much more plenteous in numbers, really a minority here in New Mexico, even though I think Hobbs has 8% Blacks and the state has 4% statewide. We're really a minority here, and that's a little different experience for me coming from Alabama. Tuskegee, as you guys probably know, the history of Tuskegee University, Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, Tuskegee Airmen, is 95% Black. So I've come to a situation where I'm really a minority here. I'm the only Black attorney in private practice. We do have some other Africans. We have some other Africans that have migrated to the United States, and a girl from Haiti. They're in the district attorney's office and the public defender's office. But again, I'm the only Black in private practice in this part of the state. I could probably talk about that for hours upon hours. For me, the military has been probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. The discipline, you know, kind of that Uncle Sam is kind of real. Your drill sergeant becomes your daddy when you're going through basic training, or that, you know, that uncle. And I really excelled as an enlisted person in the military, a soldier of the cycle, commandant's list, top 10, this and that and nothing. So, so it's been good experiences. I've grown, I've matured. You know, when you get dropped in the middle of the desert, you're kind of vulnerable. You're kind of, you know, you're out there, and really that's what introduced me to Christ. I accepted the Lord in northern Saudi Arabia, while the ground was shaking and they were dropping bombs. But really, we were dropping bombs, getting ready to go into Kuwait. The soldiers of the 2nd ACR were having a Bible study every night. And I went in there and decided to accept the Lord, realizing that, you know, the Bible talks about wars and rumors of wars. And the reality of wars is people die in wars. And so I accepted that, you know, there's nothing I could do to get out of the war. If I could steal an airplane, I couldn't fly it. If I could fly it, I wouldn't be able to refuel. So I said, well, Lord, if this is what you have for me, this is what you have for me. And fortunately, he was with me every day. So came out of there better than I went in. I'll be honest with you. The Army is probably the best model of integration of any institution that we have in this country. As you probably know, we make up the majority of the Army, Black males, that is. And so it's kind of a welcoming area. Many of us found ourselves in the military, found ourselves getting that discipline that we lacked, having that daddy that we missed, and you know, really and truly, when you put this uniform on and you're in training or you're in a war, it doesn't matter what color. Everybody's green. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And these are military brothers in arms. And that really was my experience. It didn't matter what color you were, or if you were from Alabama, Mississippi, or Georgia. You know, we're trying to get back home. And we had a common enemy. So it was unifying. Again, you know, I've over the years, I've learned that in the world, the Army is probably the best model of integration that we have. That being said, when I went to officer candidate school, because I didn't stay enlisted, I wanted to be an officer. Well, after going to Desert Storm, I was like, they won't get me back over here as an enlisted person again. The next time I come, I'll be an officer, you know, calling some shots, you know. But what I was saying, when I went to OCS, my old principal was one of the instructors. And I was gun-ho and, you know, wanted to go to airborne school and ranger school. And he pulled me to the side. He said, Bettis, I need to tell you a couple of things. He said, for the most part, there's a ceiling for Black officers in the combat arms. You think of infantry, artillery, armor as your combat arms. And there's a ceiling for Black officers. It's not easy. Whereas the path on the supply side, the communications, finance, medical, supply is a lot easier for a Black. So I can't say that I have not seen racism in the military, because I have. And actually the way I got to OCS was I had to make a complaint to the, it wasn't EEOC, it was, there's a section that deals with equal opportunities in the military. And so I made an oral complaint to my first sergeant. And I said, First Sergeant, I've been asking, you know, month in and month out, because I already had a degree. I had all the qualifications. Why can I not go to officer candidate school? And once I made that oral complaint, he got to work and made some phone calls. And the next month, they said, Bettis, you're going to OCS. So it's different when you start looking at the officer side. And you know, as you're probably aware, you know, there are a lot of Black generals now. One of my classmates from Tuskegee actually became a 1-star general last year. And, you know, we were in ROTC together and hung out and drunk beer together. And we were in the military together. And I'm just so proud to know him. And then another classmate of mine became a 1-star general in the Air Force. So, you know, being from Tuskegee, General Chappie James was the first 4-star Black general in the Army. But again, you know, Uncle Sam's been good to a lot of us, giving us opportunities. GI Bill helped us go to school. The reason I got in the military, because I didn't have enough money to eat while I was in college. So I joined the reserves so I could, you know, go to drill and during the summers, go to training and have some income coming in. And all of that really, really helped. So it's been a good experience, but it is a reflection of America. Racism runs deep in people's hearts and in people's minds. Probably more racism in the combat arms than there are in the other areas when you look at Blacks and trying to excel and advance and succeed. And I have run up against that. But again, all in all, you take the good with the bad, great experiences. I'll tell you this, when I went to Afghanistan, I had a private in my unit. He said, Lieutenant, he said, my mother called me when I was in basic training and said, well, where are you sleeping? And he said, well, Mama, we sleep in a big bay, you know, as Black folks, as Chinese folks, as white folks. And she was like, oh no, you can't be sleeping in there with Blacks and Chinese. And, you know, he said literally in his community, he didn't see a Black person unless it was on television. And he was in Southern Indiana. And so, you know, whereas the military is good and the Army is a great model for diversity, you know, it's a reflection of society, and racism runs deep. You know, we've seen it with President Trump and all that he's done. He reminded me of George Wallace. Being from Alabama, George Wallace was the governor who ran on the segregationist ticket to try to become president. Well, really and truly, President Trump succeeded on the same theory that George Wallace had to run on a racism ticket. You know, President Trump pulled all kind of Ku Klux Klans out of the woodworks to come and vote. With all that being said, I'll say though that my experiences in the military have been great. Some of my best friends have been friends that I made in Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, Germany, or somewhere else, and they weren't always Blacks. You really made some true friends because it was born maybe out of adversity or whatever we were facing, and we really did need one another. You know, and it's a lot of fun. The military schools are a lot of fun, especially when you're in combat arms. You know, you're out there running around with face paint on and all this gear like G.I. Joe, and it's kind of bonding, you know. But, you know, good experiences. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't trade it for the world. The thing about the Army, there's a TM, a technical manual that tells you how to do everything. That tells you what the requirements are to be promoted to the next level. And, you know, it's all in writing, and that writing doesn't change because somebody is racist or they don't want you to have a position. So, you know, you just really kind of go back to your training and you find the manual, and, you know, you bring it to somebody's attention. You know, listen, I've been to this school, I've been to that school, I've met all the requirements, and why have I not been selected to be promoted? And oftentimes, you know, if they didn't have a reason to justify for not promoting you, you got promoted. Now, when I became an officer, a little bit different, because you got this thing called OER, Officer Evaluation Report, and it is subjective. And literally, as an officer, you have a commanding officer that's doing your OER, and he doesn't like you. Well, it's going to be reflected in your OER, and it's subjective. It's not based upon what you've accomplished. And that's kind of one of the things I didn't like about the military, that you had kind of subject your career to the subjective opinion of a commanding officer. And it could just be, you know, where you're from and what you're about and what they're about. But, you know, I think all in all, these were experiences that help you grow. And, you know, as you probably know, cream rises to the top. So when you're good at what you do and you do it well, at some point in time, it's going to be hard for them to deny you. And that's kind of what the military taught us: excellence. Be good at what you do, become a subject matter expert, a technical expert. And, you know, and then you kind of fighting for that man to your left and to your right. You know, no man left behind was one of the sayings that we used to have. And literally, you know, that's it. So, you know, during wartime is probably better than in peacetime, because you run into some of those hurdles and blocks, but you can get through them. It's personal growth. Sometimes it's, you know, you got to be transferred from this unit to another unit. You know, in the military, you got 2 years in one particular spot, and then you go to another unit. And sometimes that's a good thing, you know, because you have an opportunity to prove yourself all over again. So faith in God, relying on your training, and being good at what you do. And, you know, there are hundreds and thousands of examples of Black men who have completely excelled in the military and done well and, you know, so decorated. You look on the uniform and the entire chest is decorated with ribbons and, you know, for Valor, you know, combat infantry badge, expert marksman, airborne, air assault, ranger. Again, these are objective schools and things that you've done, and it's reflected on your uniform. And when people see that, they know that's a real soldier. They know where you've been, they know what you've done, and they, tip their hat to you or salute you, whatever. So, all in all, again, greatest experience in my life. I wouldn't change it. Scary sometimes. You find yourself in some situations, somebody's shooting at you, and you're like, I ain't done nothing to them. Why they shooting at me? But freedom is not free. So that maybe that's a transition. Freedom is not free. Freedom has come at the cost of many lives, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. When those bullets come down range, they're not asking what color you are. They're looking for whoever they can hit. And if your brother goes down, you're going to help him. I don't care if he's white, Black, Asian, Hispanic. You're going to help him because that is your brother. Your life generally depends on that man on your left and on your right. Did they do their job? So with that, freedom is not free. I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm still alive, still clothed in my right mind for the most part. Everybody doesn't come back that way. Everybody doesn't come back. Left a lot of good friends over there, and it's kind of one of those things you have to process it. You have to grieve, but men don't necessarily grieve when they need to grieve. So some of us hold that and carry that stuff with us, and it affects you to this day. I can remember the faces of the guys that got killed. I can remember seeing their families when I got back on the airplane, feeling guilty. Why wasn't it you instead of them? I remember coming back from Afghanistan the first time. Two of the guys got killed, and both of their wives were there with the chaplain when we got off the plane. And one of the wives was crying. She was grieving, so that's a natural response, and you kind of understood, and you kind of wanted to cry with her. The other one was just looking at the airplane, hoping that maybe her husband, all this was a joke, and her husband was going to walk off that airplane, but it wasn't going to happen. And that's the reality. Her husband and her children gave the ultimate sacrifice in giving their father. So freedom is not free. The life we live and the way that we live has come at the price of many lives, many limbs, and many minds. The tragedy, I think, in America is a veteran who doesn't have a place to live. And it's not that the VA hadn't done anything and the military is not doing anything. He's dealing with probably depression. He's dealing with some paranoid schizophrenia, and there's nothing that anybody can really do, nothing his family can do. He left it all in Vietnam, or he left it all in Iraq, or he left it all in Afghanistan. And every war, you kind of leave a piece of yourself there. That's a reality of it. You don't come back the same as when you went. And so, freedom is not free. That's the thing I'll say. Freedom has a price with it. And, this is our country. We've been fighting for it since the Civil War. We've been fighting in every war. We hadn't missed a war. We hadn't missed leaving our blood on the battlefield. So I stand proud and stand tall when I say this is my country. As you know, it was built on the backs of slaves, and we weren't slaves until they captured us and brought us over here. But they brought us over here, so we built the economy of this country, and we've defended it in every war, and we've done great jobs. You know, the Tuskegee Airmen and the Red Tails were notorious throughout Europe because they were so excellent at what they did. And you know, just a few years before that, they said black men weren't smart enough to fly airplanes. They didn't have the physical stamina, nor did they have the mental agility to fly airplanes. And so, you know, we proved them wrong. And so you had these all black air squadrons, fighter pilots who escorted bombers. Bombers would have fuel in it. They may have supplies. But again, cream always rises to the top. And sometimes it may not be on purpose. It just happens. You put cream in coffee, you know, that coffee is going to turn a lighter color because cream rises to the top. And we've always risen to the top. One of my greatest military experiences was going to Liberia. Colonel Charles Young was the first West Point graduate, black man from Ohio. And his last tour was in Liberia as the a military attaché. And so, you know, I'm a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, and Charles Young was a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity. So walking in his footsteps on my 2-year mission in Liberia was just kind of a personal accomplishment that, you know, I talked to my fraternity brothers about, because, you know, we all talk about Charles Young and what he did to prove his fitness in the military and riding from Wilberforce to Washington, D.C. They said he wasn't physically able to do it, and he showed them that he could. And to be stationed the same place that Charles Young was stationed was a complete honor. And united with my cousins in West Africa, another honor. And so I appreciate Uncle Sam for giving me those opportunities.
My name is Anthony Mahan. I'm from Hopewell, Virginia, and I've served in the United States Air Force from 1974 to 2004. I was stationed in Georgia, Alaska, Virginia, Arizona, Guam, and New Mexico. And that's what brought me to New Mexico. Coming from a little small town of less than 25,000, it was what I wanted to do. I knew that the world had to be bigger than my little town. I could have made good money in my town because it's full of factories, work, but I just did not want to live and die in that little town, work 40 or 50 years and never see the world. Basically, the military to me was like just a job away from home. Being the oldest of 6 children prepared me to be a superintendent, logistics superintendent of over 1,600 people. So it was just, as they say in sports, I felt like I was built for the military. I've always had to accept responsibility. It was basically just a job away from home as far as I was concerned. And as you get older, you look back on it, and the scripture says it right in Romans 8:28. We know that all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord. and who are called according to his purpose. So the military, I was prepared for the military by the way I was raised. I would say uh, my parents said, they planted a good seed. The Air Force, formal education, and life experiences watered it, and God added the increase. Uh, the military was, like I say, was easy for me because I was always taught right, how to respect my elders, respect for authorities, the proper time and place to speak, treating everybody with dignity and respect, praising in public, and criticizing in private as much as I possibly could. And who knew that those lessons would be called tact and diplomacy by my superiors, but it was just basic home training. So the military was easy. I was blessed to start off in a very uh, disciplined organization called a Strategic Air Command. And so by the time I left there and went to Alaska, they were like, man, you're so self-disciplined. Well, the Strategic Air Command, they were just like, you know, in school or in prison or whatever. You had to follow everything by the book or else. So that really set the tone for my career. And then I always had good mentors to help me along in my military career. I learned some very invaluable lessons early. One of my younger supervisors, and he was my running buddy. We ran the streets together, but he taught me some valuable lessons on how to be personable and relatable without losing control of your unit, and ensuring that I was always firm, fair, and consistent with everyone. So I learned those lessons real easy in the military. The military, we're just a reflection of society. Started off in 1974 in Georgia. It was just like it was in Virginia, basically segregated neighborhoods. Uh, but I knew how to navigate my way through those things by growing up in Virginia. And one of the advantages there, being in the Air Force, we had to test for rank. So I did not have to worry too much about a lot of things, but learning how to control the controllables. Once I realized that I can control my test score, I can control my formal education, complete my professional military education, I can control my job performance, my level of professionalism. And some things you just can't control. I can't control who likes me or will I get the proper recognition for everything that I did. And a lot of times we would whine and complain because we would see the fair-haired child getting ahead. But once I realized when we came down to testing, there was room for the so-called best of the best and the best of the rest. So even though I didn't get some of the glowing awards, I still got promoted along with everybody else because I controlled the controllables. Being young and radical, I voiced my opinion and realized that even though I voiced my opinion, there wasn't a whole lot of things changing, but I was young and radical, just like, the young now. But I just had to face reality and learn in life you turn lemons into lemonade. And I also had enough sense to listen to the elders ahead of me. We would sit around and whine and complain about possibly losing benefits. They were talking one time of doing away with the 20-year retirement plan. We'd have to go longer. And I would look over at the round table at all the retirees. They're over there laughing and joking. So instead of me getting caught up in emotionalism with my peers, I would always go over and talk to them, and they would tell me, young blood, you don't have to worry about those things. Just control the controllables and you'll be all right. There are going to be changes. There are going to be rumors and propaganda. You're not going to always be treated fair. And in reality, like I say, the military was no different from society. People was catching hell on the outside too. But I thought I had an advantage of being able to test for my rank versus having to be at the mercy of my superiors giving me a raise.
What?
Oh yes, and a lot of us, this is a military community, and a lot of retirees, I serve at church with them, and I see them out and about. And I worked another 12 years as a government contractor, and a lot of the guys that work with me, we served in the military together. But it's a really, really good experience. For the most part, I would say that I would want to think that things have gotten better, since 1974. But and it appears to be that a lot of the people are a lot more knowledgeable of how to get promoted. But I think things have changed a little bit, but not much. And like as I said before, we are truly a reflection of society. Well, one of the things I always try to teach all people, especially when I had a chance to train other supervisors and managers, regardless of whether you're in the military or in the civilian world, it's easier to be a good leader or a good supervisor if you are a good person. Because if you are a good person, you can make 75% of your decisions from your gut by simply asking, how would I like to be treated in that situation? And then, as I was told by my superiors, once you get to the decision-making table, stay there as long as you can, because as long as you're at the decision-making table, certain things won't be said and things will be considered differently. And you'll be able to even the playing field for a lot of people. I've had so many come back and say, thank you, Chief, for looking after me. And I said, no, I didn't do anything for you. I just made sure that the playing field was even for you. You was worthy of this. You made it on your own. I just made sure you got your due diligence. A case in point, little Johnny may be in that section and he gets credit for all the statistics and all the glowing accomplishments, but Joe comes around and these things are not in his performance rate or record. So when I see that report come across my desk, and I know they work in the same section, hey, what's going on? How come I don't see the same stuff in his? And guys would come back and tell me how their bosses would be cussing and fussing because they would have to change the report to reflect exactly the true accomplishments of each individual. But that was my job, being at the decision-making table, to make sure that everybody was treated fairly. I served in the United States Air Force for 30 years, from 1974 to 2004. I would say if you have a desire to serve in the military, is great. Way of making a living, and whatever you're in, you have to realize that we have always stood on the shoulders of so many others. I had an opportunity to talk to one of my mentors yesterday, Chief Master Sergeant Retired Harris Campbell, and we all of us have military members in our families, if you consider the military, talk to someone that's actually been through it. And most of the people will tell you after the fact it's well worth it, especially when you're sitting at home getting a retirement check. And there are not too many organizations or corporations that give you a cost of living raise on your retirement. I didn't realize that until I got later in my years, but it was really worth it. And whatever you do in life, don't forget from whence you come, because we all have stood on the shoulders of others. The military was easy for me because of people like I mentioned that came before me. Chief Master Sergeant retired Campbell. We had an opportunity. He worked as a civil servant in the same building where I was serving on active duty. So I always had someone that I had to be accountable to. And he was always working in the community and the NAACP and the MLK, and we were always crossing paths. But I always had someone to look to. And while you're in the military, stay connected to your communities. A lot of people really say, oh, I'm going to do this when I retire. Well, if you're not doing it now, chances are you're not going to do it when you retire, and you won't even know what to do unless you start working wherever you are. And that's one of the things that I am grateful that I've done is gotten starting to work in the community and with the NAACP, with the MLK Commission, Democratic Party county chair. I'm on the board of trustees for the High Plains Medical Center, and it goes on and on. And when you start doing work in the community, people see you as a leader, and we need to have more Black leaders in the community as well as in the military.
I am Sonia Smith, and I am a proud Air Force Reserve veteran. I served in Desert Storm back in 1991. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I'm currently the Cabinet Secretary designate for the New Mexico Department of Veteran Services. I love New Mexico. I'm originally from Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, which is a Navy town. Anybody is quick to tell you, but I went Air Force because my uncle was an Air Force officer. And the reason I went into the reserve was because I needed the GI Bill money. I came out here 7 years ago because I wanted to change, and it was probably one of the best decisions that I made, even though everybody at home thought I had clearly lost my mind, because who goes to New Mexico? What Black woman goes, to New Mexico? And of course, you get all the questions. But again, it was one of the best decisions for me professionally and also personally. It is one of the most beautiful places I have ever seen in my life. So I'm so glad that I'm here. When I enlisted, I was 19. And that was back in 1986. But yeah, so I went to basic training down in Texas. And so you figure being 19 and having a little bit of college, under my belt at the time. So I didn't go in as was considered to be an airman basic. I went in, as an airman first class, And so you have women, from all over the country that come in. And there was actually this one young lady who was from, I believe it was from Montana, and she just kept staring, at us. It was only a handful of us, Black women, in the group. And I was the what they call the academic monitor. And so I remember talking to her one evening when we were studying, and I said, you seem like you just have some questions, what, and she says, she says, I've never been around Black people before. And that really stuck with me, obviously, because, I grew up in a school that was, very well, segregated. You're thinking in the 80s, somebody who would still not have that type of orientation to Black people was kind of fascinating to me. And we actually became very good friends. As a result of that, we kept in touch for a number of years. And it was just really understanding what the military is all about, how you take these folks who come from various walks of lives, and then you're put through this process where you are shaped and molded, do something, I think, extraordinary for your country. And so, but I don't want to gloss over this and say that everything was all good all the time, because that's not reality. But that particular opportunity to meet someone and to learn from each other, because it was a reciprocal friendship. I got a chance to talk about my life, and she told me more about her life. And as I shared, we became very good friends as a result of that. So I think that was probably one of the best things for me in joining or enlisting into the Air Force. Well, I've been out for so long, so I really don't want to speculate too much, but my daughter enlisted right after high school and went Air Force. And so some of the things that she shared with me weren't unlike my experiences. Of course, now there's certainly more technology. So when she went to basic training, it was a little bit different. When she went to her tech school, they had more resources than what we had. But I also know that the military takes great care of how they treat their airmen. In the Air Force, we're called airmen, and in other branches, soldiers, sailors. But there is a lot of time and effort invested in us. And I think, again, I went in for, I needed the GI Bill money, to finish. But like I said, I got so much more, from that. I would imagine that today that's not too uncommon. People do go in for various reasons, and I'm sure that there are a lot of stories, out there. Just like there are success stories, I'm sure there are some stories that weren't, also, too successful. But I think if someone is looking to maybe figure out what they want to do for a career, I think the military is still a good place to get started. But today, I really don't know. I really don't know. But I'm
Yeah.
hoping that that it's gotten better, and that the standards are still just as strong as they were when I enlisted back in 1986. Yeah, sure. So I am still new. I was appointed back in October of 2020, and my title right now is Cabinet Secretary Designate, due to be confirmed hopefully this month. but I have the best job in the state. I have the best agency in the state. What better position to be in and then to help those who have served our country? And as I shared earlier, my agency has one job, and that's just to make the lives better of our veterans and their families here. So we have 5 different pillars that we focus on. Field services, which is our group of veteran services officers that help veterans with filing claims and applying for their state benefits. We have a
Mhm.
health department. As a matter of fact, you all featured recently Jamia Warner, who is our division director. It was so good to see that because she works so hard in that area. Our state benefits, and then we have a relationship from a federal and state collaboration where we have our division that focuses on accrediting colleges and universities for the GI Bill. And then, of course, the business services component where we help veteran-owned businesses try to give them all types of assistance. Even if you are a veteran who's thinking about starting a business, we have someone to help you, with that. So you take all of that and working closer with our sister agencies because veterans are all across the state. I was talking recently about, what a veteran is. And I think we tend to think of a veteran as being, someone who has served, 30, 40 years. And now, they're out and they're trying to, get acclimated back into the civilian world. But while that's true, what's also true is a veteran is somebody who may have served just a year or two, 4 or 6, and they are separating from military service and then trying to, get back into the world. So veterans are everywhere, and veterans also have families. So it's important for us to have those relationships with every state agency and leverage those relationships and make sure that our veterans know about those. So that's what we've been working on for the last few months, is making sure that we're doing everything in our power to get those linkages up so that they can take full advantage of what's available to them. All means it's important. We want to reach every veteran in the state. Now, I know that sounds lofty and I know it sounds ambitious, but when you got one job and that's all you have to do,
Mhm.
you can get creative and you can get innovative to make that happen. So, by all means, please let your father-in-law know to contact me, and I'll be glad to help and assist. Any, you know, we can't say that the world isn't colorblind, and we can't say that the military is any different. I mean, that's just the way of the world. What we strive for is certainly trying to make that be non-existent. As a Black woman, yeah, there were certainly some things that I had to encounter and overcome. And hopefully it has made me a little bit stronger. But when you're going through it, it's no fun. We laugh now a lot about finding your tribe, finding your squad. There are organizations out there that can definitely support that. I had an opportunity recently to visit with the Women's Veterans Organization here, and they're doing phenomenal things. And it's not just for veterans, they're also available for active duty women as well. Um, I don't think there's one right answer or one answer that I can possibly say because each situation is very different. But if you are being mistreated, please use your chain of command. That's another, thing within the military, you follow your chain of command. If there's something going on with you, please tell somebody about it because no one should have to deal with any type of foolishness like that. And, of course, now um, we are hearing more about how awesome and wonderful, Black women are, and how glass ceilings are breaking all over the country. And, even here in the state, I am the first Black woman and the first Black person to be appointed to this position in the 17-year history of the Veteran Services. And as our wonderful Vice President has said, I don't want to be the last, so it's important for us to make sure that we are building putting things into place to make sure that that succession happens along the way. And I think the best way of doing that is to continue to do these types of talks and interviews and to encourage one another. And I think Ms. Beverly will give me an echo on that as well. It's important for us as women, as Black women,
Yes.
to continue to encourage each other, and she has definitely been that way for me, so I got to give her a shout out for being encouraging
Thank
to
you.
me, and also a shout out to the Office of African American Affairs for this opportunity to just talk a little bit about myself, and I'm just humbled. Thank you so much.